Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a Thursday edition of GoJo and Golic. We have so much fun stuff coming up for you today on the show. Jerry's World. Jerry Jones back in the news. Dallas Cowboys back in the news, and it is not exactly for stuff happening on the field. We will get into that. And plus, the NBA is investigating Joel Embiid, the 76ers handling of him and the time he will be taking off because of injury. So we will get into all of that, what it means for the league. Plus, a lot of quarterbacks across the league dealing with some injuries right now. We're going to talk about all that. We're going to talk about the games today. We're going to talk about so much stuff that I don't even know. So stay tuned for GoJo and Golic.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield here. We got a great show for you guys. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. GoJo and Golic is presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal, and we got a fun meal for you guys today. Bill Lawrence, the creator of Scrubs, Spin City, Ted Lasso, Shrinking, Bad Monkey, all of a lot of my favorite shows and a lot of the favorite shows of our staff around here are going to stop by and talk about a couple of his new ones here, what he's got working on, and who the best pickup basketball players are among the athletes that he has worked with, since we've got a lot of those in the mix at the start of the NBA season now. But Dad, Jesse, we got Thursday Night Football coming up tonight, and it seems like the game is sort of in the background for the existential drama surrounding this Los Angeles Rams team and their star wide receiver, Cooper Kupp, who we know in the last couple of days has been the subject of reports about his impending status as someone that's a tradable asset now for this Rams team. Diana Rossini, along with Jordan Rodriguez and some others over at The Athletic, reporting that apparently the Rams are open to conversations about trading their star wide receiver. The asking price would be pretty steep, around a second-round pick, though the Rams might be paying some of that salary for this season. And it's made it all the way to the point where Cooper Kupp's had to address it himself. So ahead of a Thursday Night Football game where he's trying to get back and play for his team coming off the ankle injury from earlier this season, this is Cooper Kupp having to address rumors about his future.
You know, I'm aware of it, but at the end of the day, I mean, I'm gonna be where my feet are. That's all I know. You know, I have a job to do here, and you know, I take a lot of pride in getting everything I can for the guys in this building, and being able to step on the field knowing that I've prepared the best I can.
Dad, it's one of those things that I think we take for granted on the outside because this is such a part of sports, especially now in the new NFL. But as a player, being in the locker room, whether it was free agency, which I know didn't come along until later in your career, or even the trade deadline being this active, just the idea of players having to constantly deal with their own mortality or place on the chessboard being messed with, got to be pretty jarring going into a game you're also trying to get ready for.
Well, yeah, especially when you've been with one organization the entire time. You know, you have a family, and the trade deadline in the NFL has only gotten big the last few years, right? It was just a passing date in the NFL. Nothing really happened. Maybe very small things happened, but nothing with major players like Christian McCaffrey a couple of years ago going from Carolina, T.J. Hawkinson going from Detroit to Minnesota. So you had impactful trades. So the trade deadline has become kind of it has become a bigger day where big players move and can help teams. So you're a human being. Again, you have a wife, you have kids, you have been in one spot for a while, and now there's a thought of just picking up and moving where it's more commonplace in a sport like baseball. Doesn't mean players enjoy it anymore, picking up and moving, but at least you know it happens more in baseball than it does in football. And so looking at the football aspect of it, there's no doubt what a great player Cooper Kupp has been. But I got to believe this is buyer beware, right? I mean, okay, so you get the Rams to pick up some of the tab to make it less, cap adverse to your team, because again, he's making 15 this year, 12.5 next year, and 14.8 the year after that. He's got a lot of money on the table, and he's been hurt. He's missed 13 games. I believe it was 13 games in the last 2 seasons. So, I mean, and it's an ankle. To me, it is definitely buyers beware. He's 31 years old. You envision what he can do for you healthy, and it's a no-brainer. But he hasn't been healthy. So it's a steep price to give for someone who you're kind of crossing your fingers, hoping you get the healthy version, which would definitely help your team, and not a version that has missed the last 4 games like he has with the Rams.
Well, and I think the other tough part for the Rams trying to come out here and set this sort of price point is the market kind of shrunk in the last couple of weeks, right? You had the Kansas City Chiefs go out and trade for DeAndre Hopkins yesterday. You had Amari Cooper going to the Buffalo Bills before. Both teams where you would have had need certainly enough to maybe go and try and get a guy like Cooper Kupp out of this. And so I wonder if the price is going to hold for that reason. And Dad, to your point with the injury, this does, if it were to get done, seems tailor-made for that conditional pick thing that we've seen going around where you tie the severity of that pick to how much playing time you do get out of Cooper Kupp if you're going to trade from him. But I wonder what it's going to take, what the Rams would feel comfortable, because I think they're going to have to move down off that price if they actually want to move him, and it's how much they need to get in return to feel good about this, because, Dad, I'm sure a team like the Washington Commanders might still pick up the phone. The Steelers certainly are in need of more firepower in the receiving room. Right. Even across the hallway in Los Angeles, the Chargers are a team that are in dire need of wide receiver help and are in the other side of football. They're not in the NFC like we're talking about here. And so those are all options. But if you're the Rams, how much do you need to recoup to feel good about this? Because the other weird part is, Dad, it doesn't feel like the Rams are a team that are getting ready to slide off a cliff next year, right? Where if you get Puka Nacua healthy again, this offensive line with a little bit more depth, defensively, the back end needs work, but you've hit on some of the young guys you've drafted up front. Byron Young has been great for them the last couple of years. Kobe Turner, who you drafted, Jared Verse this season, has been great at getting after quarterbacks in opposing backfields. And so you do think, hey, they got a little too hurt too early this year, but if you get guys healthy again next year, it's a lot of the same hopes we had for them going into the season. Why wouldn't you want a Cooper Kupp around unless you really feel like you can recoup something? So if they drop this down to a third or something conditional in that range, I don't know if that feels like enough given what's on the horizon for them.
I don't know why the Rams wouldn't run it back, right? You just mentioned the young talent on the defense. And we know the offensive firepower, so much so you see the lack of firepower without Puka and Cooper Kupp. I mean, Matthew Stafford has 3 touchdowns and 4 interceptions this year. He threw for 154 yards against Vegas without those 2. And it's the lowest amount he's passed for in his 4 years with L.A. So you see how much those 2 mean to you. But I'm with you. I mean, the defense is young and growing. I would run it back. I mean, you know, your window, Stafford is getting up there in age. You only have so many more years with him. Why not try and run it back with the talent you have? Now, you are going to cross your fingers a little bit. You have Puka Nacua coming back from injury, and you have Cooper Kupp, who has missed games the last couple of years. So it's still kind of a hold-your-breath moment with him. But if you strike it right and the injury bug steers clear, you got a team that can contend. I'm kind of with you on this.
I was going to say, I mean, go back to all the way to week 1 when Cooper Kupp had 21 targets from Matthew Stafford in a game where they were going toe-to-toe with the Detroit Lions team that's the best team in the NFL right now. We got vintage Stafford and Kupp in that game, and that connection has been such the bedrock. Now, Puka Nacua coming back, I think, is going to remind all of us just how special that guy was again last year because that's been put so far in the rear view. I think we forget he had really taken over and looked like the wide receiver 1 for that team. So that's something to keep an eye on in the future. But Dad, I struggle to see the Rams getting anywhere near the asking price that they've put out for him now, given the market, given the price tag, and given the injury history of Cooper Kupp in the recent history. And so with all that, it's, again, what number they're comfortable getting in return. But I don't know of any of these teams that are in position timeline-wise to need to give them that much in order to get where they want to go, a la the Washington Commanders or the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah, I would agree. And then looking at the game tonight, you could get Cooper Kupp back as the Rams take on the Vikings. So Kupp, and listen, for Stafford, I mean, the timing couldn't be better. The difference in his numbers against the blitz with Cooper on the field and Cooper off the field are pretty amazing. And Brian Flores in Minnesota, that defense, they love to come after you. So Matthews certainly could use Cooper Kupp on the field. A good time for him to come back.
But Dad, do you play him? If you're in the midst of all this and you're actually trying to move him, there's no way that you play an injured player like that.
So I guess we find out, right? I guess we find out. Is he on the field or is he not on the field? I mean, that's it. You're right. I mean, if you're thinking of trading a guy, you certainly do not put him on the field, especially if he's coming off of an injury. So yeah, that will be a big kind of answer to see if he goes on the field tonight. But overall, I'm with you. I don't know why they wouldn't run it back again. I know Cooper will be 32, he is getting up there in age, and he is coming off injuries. But as I said, Stafford's up there in age as well. You have a few years with this now. The defense is young. You have certainly some young players. Kyron Williams is younger as well to rebuild around. But with this kind of group, I would think about running it back as well.
As far as you mentioned the game coming up tonight, Dad, let's take a look at that for just a second here. At the very least, the Vikings roll into town coming off their first loss of the season to the Detroit Lions. The Rams are a 2.5-point home dog in this game, which that kind of smells funny to me. Does it not to you that a Vikings team that was recently undefeated and looks like one of the best in the NFL is now all of a sudden coming in here? And listen, I get, the home favorite usually gets that 3-point courtesy, but the Vikings only being a 2.5-point favorite against this Rams team that, especially on the back end, Dad, you talk about the youth on defense. It's one thing up front for what they've gotten out of, like we mentioned, Jared Verse, who's been great so far this year, him and Braden Fisk, the Florida State draft picks. But defensively on the back end, they've had to really hockey line change a lot as they tried to bet on Trey White and some older players that came over and just were too beat up to party at this point. And so now have started to swap them out with some of the younger guys in that room. You've seen Jalen McCullough on the back end, Kobe Durant, and the guys take more prominent roles, but still seems like a bad matchup against this Vikings passing attack. So I got my eye on this one. I'm still picking the Vikings in this game. I think defensively, they're still a defense that's going to go out there and impose their will against a receiver room that, to our point, unless Cooper Kupp does show up out there, doesn't have as many answers. I think Jordan Whittington also supposedly not going to be playing tonight. Their rookie out of Texas. But I don't think they've got enough firepower on that side, and I do think on the other side, the deep passing game with Justin Jefferson is going to be really tough with this Rams defense to hang with.
I'm surprised at the small point spread. I really am. But again, I don't know the bettors and setting lines and all that. It just seems like a small number to me with how this game could go. All I know, if the Cooper Kupp does play, he may get targeted again 21 times. He would get thrown right back into the fire because of the lack of firepower that this Rams offense has right now. And for the Vikings, listen, they finally lost their first game last week to Detroit. But, boy, their schedule is pretty favorable. Playing the Rams tonight, we think they're going to win. Then they play the Colts, Jacksonville, Tennessee, and the Bears, who have a winning record, and then Arizona. So, I mean, there are definitely some big-time winnable games. If they can keep playing at the way they're playing, we saw Sam Darnold come down a little bit, but that defense certainly can help carry the team, and you have Justin Jefferson on your team. So that usually gives you a leg up.
Certainly a good place to start with on there and the job that they do in the deep passing game. Against them there, the Vikings, are first in pass yards per play on passes of 20-plus yards. They're sixth on passes between 10 and 19 yards. The Rams are fourth worst on defense in terms of yards per game given up on deep passes. So I think Justin Jefferson going to be too much there. But interesting to keep an eye on with this one. The injury reports coming off of the final day before this one. 3 players already ruled out for the Los Angeles Rams. As we mentioned, Jordan Whittington out, Joe Noteboom out, and Troy Reeder. Braden Fisk and Neville Gallimore are both questionable, as is Puka Nacua, who is still on injured reserve. So that's a moot point. He's probably not going going to be playing there for the Vikings. Blake Cashman ruled out already. A Caleb Evans, TJ Hawkinson, and Dalton Reisner are all questionable for the game. So minimal relative to the usual standard on Thursday nights, which are usually decided by the injury report here. But even if it's decided on the field, and I think the one interesting thing, Dad, for the Rams, if you're trying to concoct a world where the Rams can pull this off, obviously you mentioned one element of it, which is, hey, you get Cooper Kupp back and him and Stafford just click back into sicko mode, and you get the two of them tearing that defense apart against all of those blitz looks that Brian Flores wants to present. The other thing was something that Mina Kimes brought up to me yesterday about this Rams team that I think is interesting, and the one comparison you could make to what the Detroit Lions were able to in part do against this Vikings defense. The Rams team is second in rushing success rate at this point, meaning the percentage of times they have a run that's successful. So you pick up, 4 or 5 yards on first down, halfway to it on second down to get to third down, things like that where you're staying on schedule. The Rams have been able to do that. Kyron Williams has been awesome for them again this year, keeps finding the end zone as the steady heartbeat for an offensive line that is gotten its feet back under it a little bit more. And Dad, the one thing about this defense, the defenses we've seen from the Baltimore coaching tree under Mike McDonald, that like to do all these all-up looks is when you got a bunch of little bodies around the line of scrimmage, that's music to the ears of the offensive line. If you can flip the script and give them a chance to go forward and try and move some of those guys off the ball, you've got an advantage right up the gut. And we know the last couple of years, that's how this Rams team wants to live, is moving back up the gut, running inside zone, running duo, putting Kyron Williams and Blake Corum and all these sawed-off shotgun running backs that they have with an opportunity to go and hurt them right up the gut. So it's an interesting antidote, provided you can get over and get ahead on first down, because once you start getting into those third and long territories, that doesn't really help you much unless you're in field position to go for it on fourth down. But that Rams run game up the middle as an interesting way to try and address, sort of like Detroit did by out-physicaling Minnesota at the point of attack, could be something to keep an eye on for them to try and pull this out.
Yeah, the issue, though, I think, is on the other side that the Rams give up 151 yards on the ground, so it could be a night for Aaron Jones as well. Could be a running back night, right, between Kyron Williams and Aaron Jones. The Rams have been susceptible to the run, so let's see if Minnesota, which obviously can have a great passing attack with Justin Jefferson, decides to go up the gut on the run as well.
All right, so both of us are picking the Vikings in this one, I'm assuming?
Yep. Yes.
All right, so now we've got to make the pick twofold here. Both of us think that the Minnesota Vikings are going to beat the Rams here on Thursday night. Do you think that Cooper Kupp gets moved before the deadline, yes or no?
Man, if I'm another team, it's am I giving up that capital for a guy who's been hurt? And now a lot's going to depend on if the Rams, how much of the tab the Rams pick up. Again, because it's a decently healthy tab. I say no. I say no. He doesn't get moved.
I would like to believe that, but something about this, there's just been so much smoke. I feel like there's got to be fire on this. I think he gets moved. I think the concession is going to be what you just said. I think the Rams are going to have to eat a fair amount of salary this year if they want to get it moved. But if they can recoup maybe like a third-round draft pick or a conditional in that range to give them decent capital to keep. The Rams, who have reversed polarity and went from bleep them picks as they burned the boats en route to a Super Bowl, have now gone all in and done a really good job of drafting a lot of quality young players, might be recouping even more capital, recouping, pun fully intended, to try and continue to make a run into the future around Matthew Stafford, who those rumors I never bought for a single second, any of the stuff about Stafford and his time in Los Angeles being done, considering that guy on his best day can still absolutely rip. So we got Thursday Night Football to look forward to. That'll be a show. Coming up next, though, we got to talk about the off-field show getting highlighted once again. How down bad are the Cowboys right now? We're talking about locker room tours next here on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. here. Guys, the Cowboys are in the news again, and it's not good again. The internet is buzzing over the $40 tour that's being offered at Cowboys Stadium. It offers unprecedented access to the facility, brings fans directly into the areas where the players are. So, my question is, does this add fuel to the fire that it's really not all about the football over in Jerry's world? Seems like this is an obvious answer here that yes, of course it does add fuel to that fire. But given that the Cowboys are sitting here at 3-3, players might be feeling like they just want to focus on football, don't want to be running into fans in the hallways.
Yeah, Dad, this is sort of an interesting one. So a lot of stadiums across the NFL will do tours, but Jerry World certainly has made itself an attraction unlike any other, and the thing that they tout over everyone else is we're going to take you into the part of the building where the players actually are. You'll get to see the guys up close and personal, talking stories in here. Kalen Kaler, who wrote this over at ESPN, doing a great job covering all of this and giving some insight on this situation. And it includes testimony from some former players, and I think that was what really set the alarm off for a lot of people and rose this up, where you had Dalton Schultz a while back on Pat McAfee say the Cowboys facility was like a zoo because you've got fans tapping on the glass there. KJ Henry said that when he got there, former teammates of his, guys that had been Cowboys, sort of got him up to speed on what to expect there. He said he talked about its tours all the time. Like, people are always touring, always walking through the facility. Just be ready for the randos there. Dorrance Armstrong talked about getting out of the building and liking the new vibe of the team. Tony Pollard getting to Tennessee, saying it's more X's and O's. It's just about the ball here. How much do you buy this as a legitimate distraction for the Cowboys players, Dad?
Listen, if you're there for any amount of time, you're used to it. It's just part and parcel to the experience of playing for the Cowboys. Do I think it affects them? They had 12 wins the last 3 years. Are we going to say they lost in the playoffs because of this? I mean, come on. Would I like it? No, because now they try and schedule most tours when the players aren't there, but there are tours when the players there, and the tour guide tells the tour people, don't talk to the players, don't approach the players, because you'll basically walk right by the players when they leave a meeting room or they leave the weight room. You can literally walk right by the players. It is wild. It's $40 a pop, $70 for the ultimate fan experience, which includes an authentic letter of fandom from Cowboys owner Jerry Jones, a souvenir tote bag, a lapel pin, and a dining and shopping coupon to use at the Star. $90 to add on a Q&A session with an AI Jerry hologram. So it's
deeply disturbing.
But there is. I didn't realize it made as much money as it did. The tours of the Star and AT&T Stadium combined to sell about 500,000 tickets per year and generate nearly $10 million of annual revenue, which is considered football-related income and included in the league's revenue share, with the players receiving 48% of it. So the players are actually making money without making money, because it goes to the revenue share. But back to, and Jerry Jones has said he never heard a player complain or a player's complained to him. Of course not. Who is going to complain when you're on the team to tell Jerry, hey, this is a bad idea? Unless you're like Dak Prescott or Micah Parsons and want to speak up, nobody is speaking up. What I'll say is I would not like it. You want to just kind of be yourself in the locker room. The locker room can be a locker room. You don't want to have to kind of, act differently. But the players are used to it. Not to say that makes it better, but to say, does this affect wins and losses? I would say no. It's just something that you have to get used to if you're on the Dallas Cowboys. As I said, they won 12 games the last 3 years, and this isn't the reason they got bounced out of the playoffs. It has nothing to do with tours going on during the stadium, through the facility. So I while I would not like it, I don't think this is an issue. And the bottom line is Jerry Jones isn't stopping it. Jerry Jones is not going to say, oh, some former players have complained about it. You know what? We're not going to do it anymore. He's not going to. The dude's a showman. You have to absolutely be impressed with what he's done business-wise with this team. They failed the last umpteen years of getting back to the Super Bowl. He does have 3, but it's been a failure since '96 to get back to the Super Bowl. But the dude is a hell of a businessman.
Well, I think that's what this is really about, Dad, is it's a symptom of the root cause, which is it's about making money here, and it's about the show, and winning football games is okay, too. Like, that's basically the message I think that it sends to an extent is all of this stuff is important because we are the brand of and the show that is the Cowboys. And if this is something, because I was talking to someone about this yesterday, like football coaches, the people around football, generally neurotic in the way that they approach trying to make everything the same and keep their team closed off. It's why when we went on the road, everywhere we went, even playing in college football, you have the same meals there, you have the same meeting times, you're wearing usually team-issued sweatsuits because the team wants to remove all the variables and what you've got to think about everything around the game so that you can go and focus on doing your job the best that you can possibly do it. And with the Cowboys, that scope has to widen a little bit. And this part, for guys, to your point, have been around there that are draft picks that only know Dallas. Those guys aren't the issues because they don't have a baseline for some other place to compare it to outside of their colleges, which are always going to be, in most cases, a little different. I'll say we had tours going around our football facility at Notre Dame fairly often. And that was something that we kind of got used to over time there. It's just, yeah, people are going to be walking by the weight room. They're going to be showing that off to people. And whether it's recruits, just people around campus, that was the kind of access that you got at a place like that. And so for guys that have been around the star their whole career, I'm sure you go numb to it. And it's why you get players now that don't realize it until they go somewhere else. Oh, maybe how much they do actually internalize that as a distraction, or maybe how much for certain guys that is something that, is a relief when they no longer have those eyes on them in a place that you're right, Dad, is supposed to belong to just you. Like the locker room, the facility is an extension of that. We talk all the time. There's locker rooms where they don't even like coaches in there in the NFL, where you get them walking through.
Right.
I mean, you know well and good about that. That's the space that's supposed to belong to the players. And while we have this conversation about media access in the locker room and trying to preserve some of that, I think this is all kind of an extension of that for guys that are just looking for a little space to have time to themselves.
Yeah, and now the tours do not go through the locker room when the players are there, do not go into the meeting rooms. They're basically in the hallways viewing everything. They can look in as the team is in the workout facility lifting weights, but yeah, they're not like roaming in the locker room. So, yeah, I think we both agree we don't like it. We wouldn't like it as players, but it's not the reason, at least I don't think. It's not the reason they're losing. Can it be a distraction? Yes, because the locker room and the facility is your place. You spend more time with your teammates during a season than you do with your family. It is where you can just kind of be yourself, and it is a locker room's locker room for the most part. But again, the tours aren't going through the locker room; it's going through the facility. So I think it's while it can be a bit of a distraction to players. Oh, there's a play. I have to, there's kids because there's kids walking around. It's one thing if it's just adult, but there are kids. So you want to try and act like a good adult around kids. But at the end of the day, I think it's a very, very minor distraction that should have no input on whether you win the game or not.
No, I will say this is probably something that's a lot more annoying when you're losing the way that they are this year, though. Like when you're going 12-3, when you're winning 12 games a year and people are around there and everyone's in a good mood, but after you just got the wings plucked off of you by the Detroit Lions a while back and they're running offensive linemen out there as eligible guys, I'm sure it's not nearly as cute seeing little Timmy and Sally skipping through the hallway here while you got to try and act like everything's all right so Jerry can make a little bit more money.
Let me tell you, too, in doing the Sunday night games, and the Cowboys have been, obviously, and the fact I'm doing Sunday night game, it's Dallas at San Francisco. The Cowboys sideline, whether at home or on the road, is a frigging, it's jammed. I mean, it is as crowded as, even on the road, it is. There are more people on the Cowboys sideline roaming around than any other team. The coolest is probably the Raiders because they always have some of the old greats that are roaming the sideline. I mean, it is a who's who of Raider greats on the sideline. But as far as masses of people, the Cowboys win it hands down, and not just at home. Like I said, I'll be in San Francisco. That sideline, I'm down on the field before the game. It is now the people can only stay there in pregame, not during the game, but it is a mob scene. So Jerry just loves the show.
They have branded themselves incredibly well. Cool colors and a clean logo, for what it's worth, goes a long way on the merchandise that you can potentially sell to all these people, and the association with money and at least the idea of success that's been there on the field for the last few years, but seems to be eluding them now. This is one of the things where it seems like, hey, stories like this coming out doesn't seem good for everything down there in Jerry World. The real cracks for me, not Jerry Jones going on in radio and almost trying to fire the hosts on air. Jesse, one of his star players has jury duty, apparently, coming up right now. And if that is not the ultimate sign that Jerry Jones's grip on power in Dallas has loosened a little bit, not having the courts ready to stay away from his players certainly seems like the nearest sign of the apocalypse.
Yeah, kicker Brandon Aubrey, he missed practice because of jury duty. So he's like you see the injury report, not an injury, it's because of jury duty. So did you ever experience anything like this? Somebody had to miss practice or something because of jury duty? What's the best story that you've ever heard, Senior or Junior, both of you, for missing a practice?
I mean, nothing like this. And I mean, now again, to finish this story, this has to be mutual on both sides for him to get out of jury duty. I mean, he's one of the best kickers in the league. I mean, this certainly can't affect the game, but he missed Wednesday's practice for jury duty. I mean, Jesse, we've had guys sleep in, oversleep, missing practice, weather-related situations, especially when I was in Philadelphia. We would have, it's bad to say, but Thursday night club, we would go out, and the married guys would go out for X amount of time, and we'd go home. Single guys would go out for a hell of a lot longer than that. And what some of the players used to do is they would drive right from the establishment they were at right to the facility and just sleep in their cars. And there would be times when staff would have to go out to the cars to wake said players up, or they would have missed practices as well. But at least they were at the facility, slumped over in their car or laying down in the back seat of their car sleeping, and then having to get woken up by staff.
Wow. Yeah, I don't think that would have registered with the coaches as a good excuse.
No.
Probably not, although this all makes me think of, do you guys remember the story from former NFL offensive lineman Rich Ohrnberger, who was at one point a Patriots offensive lineman briefly, and was told so adamantly you don't want to be late for a Bill Belichick-led meeting, you don't want to be the last guy in there, that because he was on the way to the facility and traffic was hitting a little hard, he actually got in a small fender bender on purpose in order to have a viable excuse to be late for the meeting.
That is really, I mean, going above and beyond. We're lucky no one was hurt.
Did it work? I mean, it sounds like with Bill, I don't know if it would work.
I got in a car accident.
I see a church van in front of me that's all dinged up, and it's got black smoke coming out of the exhaust pipe, and I'm just like, I'm going to hit this car. I'm going to hit this car. I'm going to hit this car because it's better to pay off the insurance or peel off this guy a couple $100 than embarrass myself being late to the meeting. He said he hit the car hard enough to dent his bumper, but not so hard that it was caused further damage. He felt so bad because he said the guy that got out of the car had to be minutes away from being like 100 years old. And so he arrived at the Gillette Stadium, and he said the story was immediately met with skepticism by everybody involved here, including Bill Belichick, who, when he saw his offensive line coach, Dante Scarnecchia, who was there for a long time, just came up to him and said, "How's it going, Speed Racer?" It seemed like no one believed him right away, but couldn't really say much because it's still a car accident.
What lengths you go to for fear of the wrath of Bill Belichick? I mean, that says it all, doesn't it? I mean, that is absolutely amazing that you'd rather wreck your car or get in a fender bender than actually be late.
I remember being on the way to practice sometimes and hoping a car might just like hit me a little bit so that I didn't have to go. But just a little.
I spend most every day of my life right now hoping just one of my legs will get clipped a little bit by an Amazon truck and I can retire. So we all have goals and aspirations. Yep. It's important to speak them into power.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. Things are not going well for first-year head coach Jerod Mayo. He made some comments about his players after their loss to the Jags in London, calling them soft. And you just got to hear it for yourself. So take a listen.
Look, disappointing game. Disappointing game. We came out, we started fast. What I would say is, look, we're a soft football team across the board. We talk about what makes a tough football team. That's being able to run the ball, that's being able to stop the run, and that's being able to cover kicks, and we did none of those today. They controlled the ball for most of the day. You know, their run game averaged over 4.5 yards a carry. Our run game, not sure what the average was, but it wasn't good. Look, back to the drawing board. I mean, we can't sit here and pout. We just got to put a game together.
And some players didn't take too well to that. Some thought it was fine, some thought it wasn't. Here's some of the reactions that we got to that statement.
And called soft by a coach, you know, I feel like it was kind of a shot at the whole team, not an individual in perspective. I know tired of being 1-6, coming in saying the same stuff every week, so I kind of understand where he coming from.
For me, it don't really bother me. Like, it's all about what we put on tape. There are plays where a lot of us were playing soft, me included. Since all of us have been in, like, middle school,
So we've kind of talked about how it's not great for players to come out and publicly criticize. So does that go for the head coach too? Like, do we feel like maybe this was a touch too far from Jerod Mayo?
Well, Dad, the person who thought that was Bill Belichick. Like, that was the most surprising part of this, and maybe a window into what that relationship with Bill Belichick and Jerod Mayo is or isn't like. Because I remember when Bill Belichick went on Pat McAfee the other day and pushed back on this, said, hey, a lot of those same players were with me last year. We had a good run defense. We were able to do X, Y, and Z. I don't think those guys were soft in that locker room. It sort of raised an eyebrow. And then you remembered when Jerod Mayo was taking over with the Patriots and people asked him, had you talked to Bill Belichick? And the answer was sort of like muted and not really indicative. And we were all kind of wondering what the deal was there. And then you get the Robert Kraft interview during this last game where they were on primetime. And he's talking about how he had this plan in place for the last 5 years that Jerod Mayo would be the one taking over. And it starts to piece together maybe a world where, despite Jerod Mayo for so long being lauded as, you know, like Bill Belichick's other son, that maybe by the end, this relationship frayed enough to where Bill would feel comfortable kind of publicly undermining the guy currently in his chair right now.
Yeah, he really did. I mean, there is no doubt that he did. And, you know, to go back to Jesse's question of you know, we don't like, and I don't like when players do something like this, but is it okay for a head coach? One of the things is you always have to then know the check you're writing. You know, and it's going to get cashed by the players being asked. Like we just heard two guys comment. But there were more. All the reporters are going to ask all the players. That's going to be question number one. Do you agree with your coach that you guys are soft? And they're going to have to deal with that question. Now, the other side of it is a head coach knows exactly what he's saying at a presser. And a lot of times he's talking to the fan, or most of the time he's talking to the team. And he's talking to the team through the media. And this was as blatant as can be. We got run on, and we couldn't run the ball. So basically he equated the F word is soft in football. That is the ultimate F word in football, is when you are called soft. So he called the players something that would sting the most.
He did, but Dad, you said it. Usually coaches are doing that, sending a message through the media. Those are experienced coaches. This is a guy for the first time in the chair who in that situation seemed to be responding very emotionally the way a former player would, the way someone who's ticked off that their pride just got stepped on in public let that one fly. And so I know he's been coaching for a while. He's been on the staff there in New England. But it's his first time in the chair as the head coach, and so I'm not ready to give him full credit for the criminal mastermind element of this, where we say, oh, these guys, now it very well may have been, and you heard that from one of the players who said, we're tired of hearing the same things over and over again. Maybe this is a different way to try and reach guys. Or on the other side, and the thing that I'll be most curious about now seeing this team go forward against the Jets this weekend is, what's the response look like from this? Because, Dad, you know this is a trust is gained in drops and lost in bucket situations. And for a coach to stand up and be critical, you have to have had a lot of other instances where you're also taking accountability. And I don't know what that's looked like privately or publicly for Gerard Mayo so far, who's been more giving to the media than Bill Belichick was, has been more willing to talk and give answers to actual questions. And now we'll find out if that's going to bite him in the ass or not, deviating from that newness. You've seen new approaches in places like Tuscaloosa and like New England, where two all-time greats that always seem connected step down, and we get someone doing it a different way. And different's not bad, but different in the reception it gets from the people who have been around there for the same a long time often gets a little bit complicated. And so that's the thing I've got my eye on the most going into a Jets game, where this should be a get-right spot for the New York Jets and a chance for them to go out there and win against a Patriots team that is vulnerable on the ground on defense right now. I think offensively is going to struggle to protect their quarterback, who's done a better job of getting away from some of that pressure than Jacoby Brissett did. But I want to see how these players respond to that, because if Gerard Mayo's a guy that's been taking accountability behind the scenes, he might have the built-up equity to be able to go out and say something like this and know his guys well enough to hit. But if this was an emotional response that gets out because you're frustrated and you didn't express it the right way, I don't want to get the lose the locker room conversation going right now, but I think we'll get a pretty strong window into that this weekend.
Yeah, we don't know. You're right. We don't know what's going on inside that locker room. Keon White, I thought, basically handled it well, saying, I played soft. We all played soft. And the bottom line is they're 1-6. They stink. So there isn't a whole lot of outside. If you want to be mad, and I'd be mad as a player getting called soft, I would. But you have to compartmentalize that for the fact of looking at the film and seeing you're 1-6 and the reasons you're 1-6. Are one of them being soft? Maybe it's all X's and O's. And the word, I'm telling you, the word soft hits like a ton of bricks. It is such a testosterone sport with physicalness and hitting that if you're called soft, that is about the worst thing that you can be called. And Gerard knows that. And you're right, Mike. It may have been an emotional outlet from a former player to maybe he's already spoken to the team about it. You know, maybe he's already tried. If there was ill feelings, maybe he's squelched those. We don't know. We're not in there. But the bottom line is the team's got to look at themselves in the mirror. They're watching film of them getting beaten. They got to look in the mirror and decide how each person, how you're playing individually, because you're 1-6.
It's all very interesting. And again, I make that comparison to Tuscaloosa because you've got two people that are replacing all-time greats just coming off runs that are so historically great we'll probably never see them again, and going about their business very differently. The pitfall for so many Belichick assistants have been coming in and trying to coach with Bill Belichick's cachet and resume without actually having Bill Belichick's cachet and resume. Gerard Mayo going about it a little bit differently here so far in New England. We'll wait to see if that takes hold. I mentioned college a couple of times there, Dad, and wanted to transition and take a little bit of a checkup where, halfway-ish through a season that ends on January 20th now because of the expanded playoffs. Trying to do halfway marker math at this point is a gigantic mess. But coming off of, another reminder in college football that upheaval is the flavor of the sport this year. Shout out and congratulations to Kennesaw State getting their first FBS win as they made the move to FBS football last night over the Liberty Flames on a little bit of what was Wednesday night CBS sports action. Liberty was undefeated this season. Jamie Chadwell's bunch went undefeated last season and so was riding, I think, an 18-game win streak. Kennesaw State, by the way, Dad, rushed the field at the end of this game. So Liberty had one more possession left. They had gotten the ball back after going down and scoring and making this a 3-point game. They go and get the ball back. Kennesaw runs it down so that they've got, I think, 9 seconds or 10 seconds left in this game after a failed fourth down try to try and ice it. Liberty goes out there and throws a pass that lands out of bounds, and there's a discrepancy of whether there's 0 or 1 second left on the clock. Kennesaw State's fans rush the field the first time. Get down on the field. The PA announcer tells them, hey, they've got to put 1 second left on the clock. Can you get back to the stands? And I've never seen this before. The most organized, politeful, and accommodating fan section I've ever seen. They all flood back into the stands and let them run that one more play with 1 second left that turns into a brief bout of pitchy woo-woo, and then Kennesaw gets to rush it again. So, Dad, we've seen now multiple field stormings in Arkansas this year, certainly at Vanderbilt this year, but Kennesaw State may have the distinction of being the only fan fan base that got to rush the field twice in an upset win for the ages.
So will they get fined twice?
I don't
Will it consider
know
one
conference...
field rush or 2 field rushes? I'm just kidding. It'll be 1 field rush.
I will just be curious what the Conference USA policy on this is, because in the SEC, fining people large sums of money, 6-figure sums of money, because you want to try and curb field rushing is one thing. I feel like when it's Kennesaw State, who is 0-6 coming into this in their first year in FBS football, and your Conference USA, where already money's hard to come by. Now, maybe that means you need it and want to pry it out of their pocket, but this feels like a good spot to maybe just look the other way and say congratulations to what Kennesaw State pulled off here against Liberty. So congratulations to them. But, Dad, that's kind of been the chaos of the sport this year, and I think there have been elements of the chaos of the sport this year that you could say, hey, maybe attributed to the changing landscape of the sport. The reason that you can have some of the upsets that we've seen is because early in the year you've got the portal, you've got NIL that have changed the way that you construct rosters, and the point where you need a little more time to get to be who you are during a season, and so that opens it up for some younger or some more mature teams at a lower level to come in and win. What has your impression been so far, Dad, of this first season where we've got the expanded playoff looming as a conversation, name, image, and likeness in the portal are now multiple years in as a process in the way that we've built teams? Has it affected any of what you've seen as far as the enjoyment of the sport on Saturday so far?
No, and I said it when NIL started, and the portal, the portal, quite honestly, is, in my opinion, more, if you want to call anything disruptive, it's the portal. Of the amount of players that change teams, especially quarterbacks that have to learn new systems. Some hit like Cam Ward, some don't hit. But I thought the portal and NIL, people saying, oh, it's going to ruin college football. It's not ruining college football. It hasn't ruined college football. Going to 12 teams hasn't ruined college football. We've gotten great games with big-time teams, Oregon, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia. We've gotten great games, and we'll continue to get great games. And I think it's a good first year going to 12 teams. Not to say that all 12 teams could possibly win the championship, but would you be surprised if Oregon loses? Georgia already lost. If Penn State loses, Ohio State already lost. If Miami loses, they've been hanging on by the skin of their teeth. I wouldn't be surprised if any team lost to another one of the big-time teams. Like I said, it's not 12 deep that the 12th and 11th and 10th team have a great shot at the title, but I do think it is open more than normal this year, and I think that bodes well for a 12-team playoff.
I think the thing that's been most encouraging to me is the one that's most in danger going forward, and I think that group of 5 automatic bid spot has been a net positive for the conversation around the sport. Now, what I will say is this is because of the players. Like, because you have someone as special as Ashton Genty, we now want to see him in the playoff against that competition. Because the service academies have great quarterback play this year, we talked to Blake Horvath yesterday, they're ranked in the top 25 and within shouting distance of this and trying to make this happen. So it's always because of the players, but the structure of the sport now forces these guys to be more of the conversation because one of them is going to get to play for the playoff. We know Power 4 schools want to try and eradicate that, specifically the Big Ten and the SEC want more guaranteed spots for them. So I think that's huge. I think the other thing that's going to be interesting relative to scheduling, Dad, is because we've got these massive bloated conferences now where the Big Ten's got 18 teams, is some of those undefeated teams aren't going to play each other. And so you could get Indiana, Oregon, Penn State that are all still right now in contention and unbeaten in conference. They all have to play Ohio State, but don't play each other. There might be less crossover, less common opponents to use as a measuring stick that's going to make this awfully messy when we get down to actual nut-cutting time with who we pick for the playoff.
Well, that's why I think, again, committee isn't AP, but they certainly, I think, they look at the AP, and that's a difference of Penn State being undefeated number 3 and Indiana being undefeated number 13. If they were to run the table, now Indiana would have to beat Ohio State, right? I mean, to do that.
Yeah, they would
So
have to do that in order to be undefeated. But all those teams play Ohio State, so if they all have that common opponent, and that's the only thing we have to go off of, it does put a lot of stress on this committee to go out here and make very human judgment calls around resumes that are going to be remarkably, remarkably similar. All right, guys, it's time for Better Yet as we take a look ahead at Thursday Night Football. Better Yet is presented by Larceny Weeded Bourbon. Lock in a win and seize tonight. Bardstown, Kentucky, 46% alcohol by volume. Think wisely, drink wisely. And thinking wisely tonight, we talked a little bit about the Cooper Kupp situation going into Thursday Night Football. This Rams team reeling a little bit. One of the areas they've struggled mightily, defending the run on defense. The Rams right now giving up the third most rush yards per game in the NFL. Aaron Jones, healthy and off the injury report for the Minnesota Vikings. I like his over on the rushing total, 68.5 yards in this game. I think the Vikings go out there and get the win, and I think there's a great opportunity to eat up some yards on the ground as they head out to Southern California to try and rewrite the ship after that loss to the Lions. Welcome back to hour number 2 of GoJo and Golic. In about 15 minutes, Bill Lawrence, the creator of Scrubs, Ted Lasso, and most recently now Bad Monkey and Shrinking, which has come back for its second season, been renewed for a third. Going to stop by, had a chance to visit with him. Awesome guy. He's been on going back to the GoJo podcast days here for any day one listeners. Bill Lawrence was an early guest for us there and someone who I really enjoy visiting with. But we are dealing with an incredibly frustrated version of my dad right now who chooses to live his life on the edge of his own accord. My dad had an extended break because of the way that we have our last segment going. My dad is back in Arizona right now doing the show from his casita, the lap of luxury out in Scottsdale. And dad is a coffee maker, mere feet from him, where he does the show in his studio every morning, and yet waits right until we get up to the end of the segment to go and try and get the cup of coffee made. And now, what is that? Is that mom coming to bail you out in here, or is that you reaching for it, knowing you can't get it now because you waited too long to go and start your process?
It's literally 8 feet from me, and it was brewing. It was brewing while it's a single cup coffee maker, so it takes a while. You have to pour the coffee in, so it has to heat up first, and it just didn't fit. I mean, it's literally done right now. It's literally sitting there, a hot cup of Joe that I could be enjoying, but I got to wait 15 minutes now, to which it's not going to be a piping hot cup of coffee when this segment is over.
Senior, can I tell you something? You could just go get it, because you're the Golic part of GoJo and Golic. So you could just stand up and go get your coffee.
Yeah, just get up and go get it. Jesse and I will talk about, you know what, Dad, I'll tell you what we're going to talk about right now. How about this? I will tease for you and treat you as the audience that we're going to talk about the dreaded vote of confidence that one NFL coach just received from his owner last night at an event. You can go and get your coffee now. Jesse and I will talk through this, and we'll see if when we come back, you can use context clues to figure out who we're talking about. Go get your little coffee here, and I'm going to talk about the coach, okay?
Thanks.
Okay,
Thanks.
Go.
All right, there he goes. So last night at an event honoring John Mara's father, Wellington Mara, who had a documentary made about him. They were having the premiere of it last night. John Mara goes out here and does the thing, saying at the premiere, by the way, it's the Duke, Wellington Mara's Giant Life. He said, obviously, we're all very disappointed with where we're at right now. But I'm going to say one thing. We are not making any changes this season. I do not anticipate making any changes this offseason either. Dad, which NFL owner was that, and which NFL head coach and GM pairing was he talking about? Dad,
I have no idea.
Which NFL owner has a famous enough father that they would have made a documentary about his very prominent football life, also owning the same team, and who also has a head coach and a GM that at this point in the season are very much under fire, their jobs, their quarterback's job, all very much on the line?
The Giants?
Yeah, there you go. You're a smart little boy. It's because you got your sip of coffee in.
All right, and I got my cup of Joe. Yes. All right.
See, everything's really looking up around here this morning. Unless you're, oh, God. What is our budget in the graphics department here? Is this what we're doing with our time around here? We're the coffee beans and the sharks that Hoff always likes to throw up here too, or whoever's running TV today? I have no idea what's going on around here for the audience that watches us visually here. What I do know is, Dad, John Mara thinks that this is a good thing. I always get worried when this starts to come up here. And again, it was not, it was something he got asked about at this event for the premiere of the Duke, Wellington Mara's Giant Life last night. But coming off of a loss where they just got very publicly embarrassed by the guy that they all let walk out the door in Saquon Barkley, who went out and had a career day, who we got the audio, like this twisting the knife, Dad, where he was on the verge of his single game rushing record, and we get the audio of Saquon Barkley and Nick Sirianni on the sideline talking, and Sirianni saying, hey, you're X amount of yards away from your total. We got the backups in, and Saquon Barkley very kindly defers and says, said, nah, let the young guys eat. I don't need this right now. Basically calling off dogs, Dad. The worst thing that you can do when you've got someone down on the ground, it's like the end of a movie in Gladiator where they got the sword to his neck and they just drop it and decide that he's going to let them live. The am I not merciful Maximus Spaniard moment from the movie. It just seems like that leading into this has to be ringing in the Mara's ears right now, knowing what they've done and now what their team has become on the other side of that.
It couldn't have gone worse from the offseason hard knocks of Mara saying that he hopes we don't regret this move to not having them, and then actual practical application. Saquon Barkley chooses to not go for his personal best. You're right. That is a definite slap in the face, without question. There is no way that GM, coach, and quarterback are safe in the Giants. As a matter of fact, the odd, and I know, feel like we have to say this every time. We do not call for anybody to be fired. We would love everybody to keep their job at all time, but we know that's not the case, that there are 4 to 7 coaches every year that lose their jobs and quarterbacks shift around. We know it happens. And I think it's going to happen in New York. I think it's going to be a clean sweep and a kind of a do-over there in New York.
I would agree. I would think if I'm power ranking or handicapping the likelihood of that, I do think the quarterback is for sure not going to be your quarterback next season, barring an unforeseen run of incredible production that I just don't think is possible, given the fact that you've already had, Malik Neighbors is back, but he's already been banged up. You're down Andrew Thomas on an offensive line that needed continuity to overcome, I think, the overall talent level there. On and on down the list. The back end of that defense, there are just all these things that we can point to. I don't think Daniel Jones is going to be the quarterback next year. And Brian Daboll, who was coach of the year a couple of years ago. Now, Daniel Jones was also a quarterback that played well enough in 2022 to go out and have them sign what was a 2-year prove-it deal that gave him a pretty good chunk of guaranteed money. I think with Brian Daboll, we've seen even some of the frustration from him leaking out that looks like someone who understands, hey, right, wrong, or indifferent, my job and my success are tied to Daniel. And so I think for them, and quite honestly, the GM, for Joe Schoen, and what they've gone about doing and building this roster up, I think invites a lot of questions that should put his job in jeopardy as well, potentially, if you're going to have those other guys on the chopping block as well. Again, you're right. We don't want to see this for everyone. These are human beings with families and lives, but if this is about accountability for the way that things have gone, I shudder to think of a world where Daniel Jones and the players are held accountable in the way that the coach and especially the GM aren't.
Yeah, I mean, it's life. It's life in the NFL. And, you can point to injury like you did, but injury happens every year. You have to be able to pull through. Now, there are some times where you're just devastated by injury and you say, okay, let's run it back because we were just so beat up with injury. But for the most part, it's tough to look at that and say, well, they were injured here and they were injured here, so let's give it another chance. Let's run it back. When injuries happen every year, you're not guaranteed that it's not going to happen again next year, and you have to be able to have people that can pull you out of the fire. And right now, they don't have that, especially at the quarterback position. I agree. If the GM and coach hang on to their job, it's going to be a new quarterback. That's certainly where it's going to start. It's just a matter of Mara, because again, changing a head coach, I know it's just done quickly at times, especially in Carolina. But man, what that does, a new coach, new coordinators, new assistants, new system. I mean, sometimes a team needs that, a breath of fresh air, and other times it's like, okay, players going through another change and another change. You can take a step back before you take a step forward, but owners see teams win quickly or win after making some changes and think we can do the same thing. So I agree. I think the quarterback for sure will be changed if, in fact, GM and head coach do hang on to their job.
I would agree. And to the point about John Mara and the vote of confidence here, remember, Pat Shurmur and Joe Judge only lasted 2 years each as coaches for the Giants. John Mara also gave his public support of Jerry Reese and Ben McAdoo during the 2017 season, only to fire them before that season was over. Now, that was complicated, remember, by the Eli Manning benching that went on at the end of that season that broke his streak of consecutive starts at the end of that era in Giants football. So complicating factors, but Giants head coaches being shown the door early, certainly not a new phenomenon, even under this ownership. ownership group that, Dad, is one of the first families of the NFL that is kind of what we always lump in with the Steelers as places that value continuity, that unfortunately just has not shown up for them in the ways of production for a lot of these coaches in recent memory.
Yeah, and the only team that has shown continuity to that extent has been Pittsburgh, with just 3 coaches since Chuck Noll. And Daniel Jones from the money side will only count, $22 million next year in a dead cap hit. So that's considered pretty light nowadays.
I will say, Dad, what makes this all the more interesting with the Giants is the foil they're being put up against is the other team that we expected to be at the bottom of the NFC East with them in the Washington Commanders. Like, the Eagles and the Cowboys have had their own version of problems, and right now the Cowboys look far from a contender. The Philadelphia Eagles, with some healthy skill weapons and offensive line, appear to be able to perform a little bit better, but still don't look great. It looks like a much more accessible division, but we said at the beginning of the year, we expected it to be Cowboys and Eagles, and then probably Washington and the Giants battling for the bottom of this. And you've got a Washington Commanders team that's been the story of the NFL season so far. Now, that's been complicated by the injury to Jaden Daniels from this last weekend and their win over the Panthers, although Dan Quinn spoke about this the other day. Let's get the update from Dan Quinn on what the injury from Jaden Daniels looks like it's going to net them coming up this week and beyond.
Back in Jaden's participation, he won't practice today. He'll continue, all the meetings and our individual stuff to go through that, but he'll get the treatment today, and then he'll continue to progress, through today and tomorrow. And I'll update you guys after Friday's practice.
Dad, I'm surprised, given the nature of the hit, that this has become as much of a lingering issue as it was. I figured them holding him out in the second half of that game was as much about, hey, it's the Panthers, we're already blowing them out right now. Marcus Mariota, capable backup, who came in and to the point we made about injury, gave them a culture win there in Washington. Are you worried at all about Jaden Daniels now, given the fact that this has popped up midway through this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're being extra cautious, understanding they still have a decent amount of season to go. They are sitting at 5-2, so they don't, obviously you don't take any leeway for granted, but maybe an extra week off. You're going up against the Bears defense. That is a really good defense. By the way, your next game is the Giants, who lead the league in sacks. Right now they have 31. So your next 2 games, while the Giants aren't a very good team, they can get after the quarterback. And Marcus Mariota came in and did a nice job. So maybe there's that thought that we can give Jaden some extra rest and really let this thing heal up. And Marcus can carry us through, because you're right. We keep talking about Lamar Jackson when he got hurt. Oh, he's a running quarterback, he's going to get hurt. The times he got hurt is in the pocket, not running. Well, Jaden Daniels got hurt running. It's a long run. It was a hell of a run, but he got landed on and he got hurt running. So that's cause for concern. And that was a concern because he is more slight build than Lamar Jackson, even though Lamar lost some weight going into this year, that maybe they just want to give Jaden some extra time and have confidence in Marcus Mariota.
Because you did mention him getting tracked down in the open field. That was the surprising part and a reminder of his frame, because the hit didn't look all that violent. He got folded up a little bit from behind, but it wasn't one of those monster head-on shots we're used to and have a pretty healthy highlight reel of Jaden Daniels yeeting himself into a massive humanity while he was in college at LSU and putting himself in harm's way that he hasn't done. To his credit, he's been much better taking care of his body so far through the early portion of this NFL season than I anticipated. It was one of the big question marks, one of the few question marks, quite honestly, around his game. And Dad, it would be a bummer because the 1-2 matchup we've all been looking for is coming up this weekend.
Yes.
You mentioned that Bears defense. It's Caleb Williams, the number 1 overall pick, against what we hope was Jaden Daniels, the number 2 overall pick. The one thing that does make me feel better, while Jaden Daniels is a part of the rushing attack for Washington, Dad, the offensive line has been great for this team. They're one of the best teams in terms of yards before contact in the NFL. And in terms of protecting the quarterback, they're top 10, they're 8th, the 8th fewest pressure quarterback percentage. The quarterback is pressured the 8th lowest rate in the NFL by the Washington Commanders. That offensive line has been a real story of success through the early portion of the season for me. And so they do have good things around him to protect him and insulate him if and when he does come back.
And that's been a surprise, right? We thought that O-line would have some growing pains, and they really haven't. And they're getting a good rushing attack from Brian Robinson and Jaden. I get it, but maybe they can afford to sit him this week. But we were looking forward to that 1-2 matchup. Hopefully we'll still get it.
Third most yards before contact per carry in the NFL, your Washington Commanders in 2024. The full Houston Texans vibe reframe is on in our nation's capital. For me to bring back Bill Lawrence, kind enough to join us again, the creator of so many of your favorite television shows, from Spin City to Shrinking, Bad Monkey, Ted Lasso. Scrubs is a personal favorite, Bill, of many of our staff around here at GoJo and Golic. So everyone hyped to have you here today. How you doing?
Oh, too nice, man. I'm a fan, so glad to have an excuse to leave the writer's room. So fun for me to not have to work and say I have to go do other work, which is not actually work, so I'm grateful, man.
It is. We're always about creative loopholes here in this industry.
I know,
it's a
right?
beautiful secret of everything that goes on. But you mentioned the grind of the writer's room. How are you feeling right now? I mean, you just had season 1 of Bad Monkey finish up, and it gets all this critical acclaim. Season 2 of Shrinking just drops. You get renewed for season 3. Like, do you have a chance to stop and smell the roses at this point?
I do, but only because like the advantage of, look, man, I'm very bangsy, so I try to look like boyish and shit. But I'm 55, man, so I've reached the age that if you're in a writer's room past like 8 o'clock, I become like the angry dude that's mad that your dog goes to the bathroom in his yard, you know. And so the young writers lead me out of there now. Like, why don't you come back in the morning when you're not so angry, and we'll just show you what we did. So I think part of the gift for me is anybody that does what I do and pretends that they do it all themselves is full of crap. And so I'm lucky that I have. So it's interesting for, you know, in relation to you, I got one son that just loves the physical contact of sports. And so he was never a basketball or racket sports guy like me and my other boy and my daughter. And he compound fracture of his arm when he was playing football young. So my wife said, no football for you. So he found water polo as the only other sport he could find that people really just kicked out of each other, you know?
Yeah, no, that one, my sister was a swimmer, and we always tried to nudge her towards that because she's inherently a little bit physical and violent. So
Yeah.
you can get your pound of flesh out in that sport, no doubt. But you mentioned your daughter. I mean, you talk about your boys and some of the sports there. What was it like? I mean, I get to work with my dad every day. I know you watched, your daughter grow up and follow her career in music. But what was it like being on set and actually getting to work together a little bit?
Mike, is awesome, right? So look, you probably entered the by the way, side note, my daughter was a rock star jock, and the saddest moment of my relationship with her, she was made the captain of her she's a volleyball stud, and she made the captain of her high school basketball team right before she had to drop out and be a musician. And she came and broke me the news that she wasn't going to be playing basketball anymore, and almost killed me. I'm like, come on, well, who cares about your dream? My dream is to watch you go 13-12 every night, anyways. So you probably faced a little, like the nepotism world, at least, to kind of work with your dad and stuff. Yeah. And I'm so adamantly on the side of, if you have the ability to work with your friends or your kids or family and they're talented, I think you're a weirdo if you don't do it, and it was a great experience for me because my daughter, I don't have any connections in music. People wear very shiny suits, and it's a very odd business world. And my daughter had never acted in anything that she wasn't playing a musician or playing some version of herself. So to have her on there and get to be around her in Miami and watch her interact with Vince Vaughn and Michelle Monaghan and all these kind of actors that took her under, it was really a career highlight for me, man. It was awesome.
I was gonna say, I mean, obviously you've had the chance to work, closely with family before, but it's so different when it's a child of yours. And you mentioned the reception from everybody else there. I wanted to ask about Vince Vaughn, because you guys, correct me if I'm wrong, met years before at a small-time poker night, right?
Yeah, we were dumb drinking buddies when I was, I think I was 24, 23, and he was 21. It annoys me that he's younger than I am. Yeah, look, my claim to fame back then, man, if anybody remembers Swingers, it was my first cool Hollywood moment because when you play poker, if you folded, I folded one day and the pizza guy came and I'm like, I'll go pay. And then while you're paying for the pizza in the background, Vince would be like, Bill, does he like musicals? Bill, if he likes musicals, tell him to come in and sing his favorite song from any musical. Tell him if he doesn't want us to watch, we'll turn the other way, but we just want to hear him, And this is a weird story only because then, like 2 years later, I went and saw Swingers, and to see that moment, when they ordered from Pink Dot in the movie, I'm like, oh, so this is how Hollywood happens. You live this around funny people, and then it's in movie. It was so weird and surreal, but it's an all-time memory for me. Yeah, I've known him forever.
Art imitating life, truly. But as you recounted that story, it sounded exactly how Vince sounded playing Andrew Yancey in Bad Monkey. And I know for you, Carl Hyacin, who wrote the book that you guys adapted into this, is someone that you greatly admired. And so why did Vince fit so perfectly for this role? Why was it finally time for you guys to work together?
Oh, look, man, there's two good points in there. So one, look, one of the dirty secrets of TV writing is the answer key is when you cast an actor or actress that you know how they sound, whether it be from knowing them for years or knowing their comedic persona or being a fan, so you can actually, kind of tweak the dialogue. So for me, the cheat sheet was with Vince is I knew him as a kid, and you can't be a young writer, you can't be a writer of comedy from that era that you didn't kind of crib some of his banter, and some of his, you're so money you don't even know it. They're iconic stuff. So that was part one. And then part two, Carl's heroes, and Carl's an icon for me. And I bet you had some of this experience in your life, is that rare thing when a dude that you kind of hero worship turns out to be exactly like you hope he would be, look, to a lot of people, your dad's like that, man. Carl's heroes are always deeply flawed people that do some questionable, sketchy stuff, and that somehow you still like them anyways, And Vince has that kind of, it's why I think it's one of the cornerstones of his career, is the ability to play someone that on paper is awful, and yet you still wish you were hanging and rolling with him. I mean, I believe the entire Wedding Crashers movie was based on guys that lied about who they were just to have sex with women that they never saw again. It was awful. And yet you sat there going, I hope it works out okay for these two. Very weird.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a well-worn track record of characters at the helm of your shows that people really like hanging out with and people really enjoy. But you also just had season 2 of Shrinking drop. Now, the era that we're in, how prevalent social media is as a feedback mechanism for all this stuff. And that's obviously a plus and a minus at certain times. That's one of the things that's changed. I'm curious for you, though, over the years, as long as you've done this and you've had so much success early on, now again with all these recent projects, like, has the thing that you've enjoyed most about making shows changed over the years? Like, do you find yourself enjoying something more now with the benefit of time and experience than maybe you did when you were making Scrubs and making Spin City back in the day?
Yeah, man, it's such a good question, Mike. You're good at your job, dude. By the way, because I do this, and I usually get answered the same: is Ted Lasso coming back? I usually get the same questions over and over. It's interesting. All right, so I actually do enjoy the connection, the ability to actually get feedback, and even sometimes in a general way interact with people that did. I was thinking about myself as a TV fan when I was a kid. If I could have had even peripheral contact with the people that were doing Cheers or MASH, I would have lost my mind. I would have been so excited. So I like that. The other thing that's a big change that I find easier is people don't understand the difference. The main difference in storytelling when I started was your goal was to come up with a show that appealed to everybody. Mass appeal is only 3 networks. And that would be on for 8 or 9 years, and the characters never, ever change. It was literally like, you want to turn on Cheers or Modern Family or Scrubs or whatever and have them be comfort food, the people you like hanging out. Someone asked Zach Braff once if how much his character changed from year 1 to year 9 of Scrubs. And he's a very funny kid. And he said, I think I had a beard at the end. It's like, I can't remember, but that's really it. And now with streaming television, when you go pitch these shows, more often than not, you're being asked to say, here's the beginning, here's the middle and end, like almost telling a story, more like a movie or more like a book that just happens to be spread out. You couldn't do White Lotus back then because that, every season of that is a complete beginning, middle and end story. I like that. I like that type of storytelling. I do sometimes miss the old version of live multi-camera sitcoms where you would hear audience laughing and it would be electric if it worked and awful if it didn't. But otherwise, man, I'm enjoying. It helps me to feel young by having new stuff around me and young people that are like, wow, a TV show, and kind of learning new things.
Is to that end, is there anything you haven't done yet that you still want to do at this point?
I don't know, man. I got this question from a couple of friends the other day because look, you were nice enough to pretend. I just want you to remember this. That you're like, oh, you've been so successful. I have had such peaks and valleys in my career. I'm really lucky that the absolute pieces of garbage I made were so bad that a lot of them didn't get on TV. But I did not expect to have a career renaissance at 55. I'm grateful and it's super fun. So I'm really enjoying myself. But yeah, I think the trick is finding things that still make you afraid. Like part of doing Bad Monkeys, I'd never done an hour before, and something that was kind of like a crime, shoot 'em up and that people die and stuff like that, get shot. And the fact that I picked my favorite author, and it was essentially like going to him and going, hey, I love this book. Can I add 6 chapters to the middle of it? And he didn't slap me in the face. So it was the first time in a long time that I felt nervous about what I was doing because I didn't want to let him down and screw it up.
Hey, listen, some of those valleys, I say it's like great quarterbacks. I don't want to see interception totals low because that means you're not taking chances and you're not trying to push the ball downfield. So,
by the way, you brought it back with a sports metaphor, but I'm such a believer that failure is such a big part of all this stuff. And if you ask me the greatest skill set I got with years, it's to not fear it as much. You know what I mean? And I feel like I'm Teflon in that I will, I'll occasionally do something that'll be so bad that it'll knock my wind out and I'll take a knee, and be like, oh my God, my name's on that, but learning to kind of be able to take those blows and move forward, I think that's the coolest thing that comes with longevity. You know, and I bet you it's the same for athletes too. You know.
Absolutely. Well, I would say it takes your wind out in a very different way than when your son puts a shoulder into your chest. When
Yeah,
you're
man, you don't
pickup
hear it.
hoops
You don't
and
hear it
knocks
as
the wind
loud.
out of you.
Yeah. You don't hear it go. Oof.
Congratulations on all of the success, man. I've been a big fan. Bad Monkey was awesome. I'm a couple episodes into the new season of Shrinking right now. Can't wait for all this to come out, man. Really appreciate you taking some time to talk with me always.
Always, Mike. I remain a fan, and thanks for including me, man. This is the easiest press / publicity I've ever done. I appreciate it.
Again, Bill Lawrence, co-creator of Ted Lasso, among many other incredible projects. Kind enough to give us some time there. And, Dad, hearing him tell the story about a poker night with Vince Vaughn that wound up becoming a line used in Swingers did make me remember, and I don't know if you remember this, because Vince Vaughn was, in Rudy. He's been a guy that's been at and around Notre Dame games for a long time at different junctures and came to a couple during my time there, but was also one of the people at the ass-whooping that was the Alabama National Championship game. And I don't know if you remember, in the lobby of the hotel after the game, you, me, Mom, Dad, Sydney, Jake, we're all standing there in the lobby, and we're all sad because we just got hammered on the national stage by an Alabama team who was holding the trophy. And all of a sudden, I feel this pat on my backside and a guy that says, "Hey, hell of a season," as he walks by quickly. And he just keeps it moving, didn't really stop to say anything. But I was in the team issue gear, so you knew I was on the team. And I look past, and I look back at you guys and go, and it was the one time I broke out of the sadness and the funk after that game. I go, oh, that was Vince Vaughn. And at that moment, I still had time to recognize how cool that was, that Vince Vaughn was there and gave a damn at all, even though we had just obviously made him very sad as well.
Yeah, he didn't give a damn. He was just being nice. I mean, he was disgusted. So, I mean, what are you going to do?
Imagine if he had gone by and just whispered, "Hey, what the hell was that?"
Yeah, what was that? But yeah, he has been such a Notre Dame supporter, though. That was, anything to bring back a memory of that game. Got to make you a little sick at this point. Have you watched it, by the way?
What?
Your title game? Have you watched it over?
Oh, I had to watch it a couple of weeks after it happened because I had to put together a highlight tape for myself to try and get ready to go and sell myself to whoever might pay for me at the NFL level. So I had to go back and watch that one pretty quick. And the worst kept secret wasn't my worst game ever. I had some good plays that ended up on the highlight reel from that game. So I was like, all right, all things considered, not necessarily the worst. Don't like the outcome. Didn't make me feel good. Drank a lot of beers after that one to make the pain go away. But watching the game back wasn't my worst effort, I'd say. Behold the glory, the power, and the majesty of the wall. We got 10 NBA games going last night in the mix. Plenty of action to get to and sort through, including already a league investigation into one of the star players missing games. But, Dad, part of the sell from last night and the doubleheader that we got from ESPN was the debut of the Clippers' new building, the Intuit Dome. They hosted the Phoenix Suns in a game that was very exciting, went into overtime. Kevin Durant hits a buzzer-beating shot, or a near buzzer beater at the end to force overtime. They go and spoil opening night for the Clippers. But did you get a look at the wall? Apparently, Steve Ballmer is trying to create a pseudo-student section in his new barn that has 51 uninterrupted rows of seats behind the basket, but the first 13 rows are vetted Clippers diehards. So apparently the Clippers go through and make sure you're a Clippers fan before they allow you to sit in these seats where you're expected to stand and make noise. And they got Kevin Durant to brick some free throws late in this game because they're basically doing the college thing where they're up, they're making noise, they're doing the waves and moves behind there. Dad, this seems like an awesome idea. I just wonder, given the fact that, one, this Clippers team might not be very good, Paul George gone, Kawhi Leonard already starting the year on the shelf because of injury, and James Harden expected to lead the charge, and also because it's Los Angeles, like in a town already predisposed to like the Lakers more. How often are you going to be able to find 13 rows worth of Clippers fans who want to come and treat this like a college basketball game?
Well, I actually think you will. You know. So it's a new arena. So Steve Ballmer's trying to make the experience, knowing that, I mean, the team is going to be down this year, trying to make the experience of a new arena worth going to, maybe in spite of the team and the record. And I think you're listen, you got some crazy fans out there. And you're talking 13 rows on each side, right? So that's not a large amount of crazy fans that you could get coming to every home game. So I do think they will fill the wall, which you mentioned, and Kevin Durant mentioned the wall, said how wild it was. He missed 2 free throws, which, by the way, kicked in the Chick-fil-A sandwich freebie to all the fans.
Yes.
So that's always a beautiful thing. That is always a beautiful thing when the visiting team clanks 2 free throws and you win food. So I do think they will be able to fill those 13 rows.
I'll be very curious. Again, it's different part of town. It's got the new car smell to it. I saw the Dan Patrick Show guys put up on Twitter, if the product is bad and the team, would the new building still be enough of a draw for you to go? I think there'll be some fascination, but it is a long season. And again, this is a town where people already are only wired to care about sports so much in terms of going out to events that don't feel marquee, that aren't driven by stars and star players. So I'm very curious. If not only like the question of were you going to be able to hold people's attention with this is one thing, are you going to be able to hold that fervor is a completely different bar you've got to clear.
Yeah, plus I think even the fans know this team is going to be down. Kawhi Leonard, you don't know when he's coming back. He's your leading scorer, and you lost Paul George, your second leading scorer, who's injured in Philadelphia. So, I mean, I think the fans, while there's the excitement of a new arena, I think overall understand that this team is not going to be what it was last year, and they're in the area. Harden's getting older, though Harden had 29 and 12, I think. He had a good game. Missed a shot at the buzzer to go into overtime. Then missed a free throw to tie it late in overtime as well to maybe send it into double overtime. But I mean, we know about Harden in the regular season. He had a big first game, but I just don't think there's a ton of hope that this Clipper team is going to be anywhere near what it was last year.
Well, I mean, he knew he had to do it all by himself. I mean, 2 of 9 from beyond 3, 10 of 28 from the field in general. It was your standard Harden, I'm going to go out there and try and volume my way through this. They got some production elsewhere. Can I say, too, the Clippers' new logo that shows up both when you look at, like, ESPN.com or on the Scorebug, too, not a fan. It looks like the Phoenix Suns played an FCS team last night. It's going to take some while for me to get used to this. It's not like the old Clippers logo is something I had some fondness or affinity before. It's just very odd looking right now. And again, again, I feel like I'm on EA College Football 25 playing FCS West at this point. So we'll see at the Clipper, which again, I want to go see the building. Like, I'm out here. I want to go check it out. It looks nice. You got the cool video board around there. That's certainly one thing, Dad. Let's go to another stadium and another arena that also enjoyed their fans getting chicken last night, because I believe there were some free throws clanked by Giannis against the 76ers that also triggered a chicken clause in that game. But Jesse, apparently the league right now going to try and make a nice show of force at the beginning as we got the announced investigation into the lack of participation from some stars in the 76ers.
Yeah, so ESPN is reporting that basically the NBA likely, like you said, to begin that investigation into the 76ers surrounding their choices with Joel Embiid, his player participation. And my question is this all really just happening because they've been so open about their plans, like between him and Paul George? Is this why? It's like, guys, maybe we should just roll that back. Just be quiet a little bit.
Dad, I feel like it's two parts. It's one, that the headlines around this team of Joel Embiid saying, I probably won't play a back-to-back again in my career. The Clippers and Daryl Morey and company being very overt about the schedule that they want to have for both their superstars. Paul George dealing with that knee hyperextension as well, combined with the fact that it is opening night. It's early in the season, so you've got some bit of national attention here before it gives way to the inevitable lull where NBA fans are going to watch for the first couple of months of the season before we get to Christmas, but the lion's share of casual fans who exist with the NBA only after Christmas Day are probably going to go away. So you get a nice show of force here at the beginning while you've got everyone's attention to say, look, we take this real seriously, and we're trying to make sure our TV partners and you fans all get a great game, and then this will probably give way because it is sort of the status quo for them to just go and investigate this anytime a big-time player doesn't participate in a nationally televised game, because they've got those policies in place to try and preserve that.
So the player resting policy started in the 2017-18 season. But before last year's season, 23-24, it got more strict. It got more stringent. So this is two sides butting heads. This is the league wanting star players around, especially for nationally televised games. And this is teams saying we have to make sure our guys are rested, especially for the postseason, which sounds odd to say in game one. But, I mean, as far as the new player resting policy that went into effect last year, number one says no more than one star player is unavailable for the same game. Well, the 76ers just had two unavailable. But, again, they're injury related. That's the thing. It's kind of like people saying that college football needs to crack down on the players laying down on the field and acting like they're hurt to stop the clock. Well, there's no way you can adjudicate that, because it would be a referee trying to say, wait, you're faking an injury, when you can't tell if a player's faking an injury. You might think he is, but they're still tough to actually call it. I mean, you have Joel Embiid still with the knee, lost weight to try and protect the knee. Paul George hurt his knee. So you're fighting, they're fighting against one another for their goals. The goal of the NBA is to have star players available for games, especially nationally televised games and especially home games. And you have teams that want to make sure they're ready when the postseason hits, or to have their guys as healthy as they can be during the regular season. So while they're trying to implement this, again, I think it's going to be hard to prove, because you'll get teams, NBA teams, throwing guys on the injury report left and right? And you know Joel Embiid, as he didn't play in the preseason, and then Paul George hurt his knee. So you're going to get teams putting guys on the injury list and say, look, they're on the injury list. I mean, to have star players available for the same game, teams must ensure that star players are available for national TV and in-season tournament games. I mean, you know, that it's going to be, I get what the league wants to do, but what the league wants to do and the outcome of a team's season are butting heads. And I know the old hats are saying, oh, we played 82 games, you can do it. It's not going to go back. You're not putting the toothpaste back in the tube here. Teams are going to rest players. That's not going to change.
NBA teams are fined $100,000 for the first offense of this, $250,000 for the second, and $1 million for anything beyond that, more than the previous penalty. Again, very hard to try and define and actually go out there. And for these teams, those fines, a drop in the bucket compared to what you're paying these star players to be available for you when things matter the most down the home stretch of the season. And for the 76ers, when you get to the postseason, trying to beat the stopping point that's usually thwarted you. All right, guys, let's finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. Three quick stories to send you off into the rest of the day. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review the show. Leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Our YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, Xumo Play, Vizio Watch Free Plus, and plenty of other streaming platforms. If you miss us or any of our great guests there, and thank you to Ted Lasso co-creator Bill Lawrence, kind enough to join us in the show talking about Bad Monkey, Shrinking, his entire prolific career. If you missed that, you can check it out wherever you get our podcast or right here on YouTube as soon as we get done with the show. Guys, let's get to this, that, and third. And let's start off feeling cheesy. Now, not the kind of cheesy that we'll feel tomorrow with our friends at Cheez-It in the college football preview, but with the folks at Goldfish here who are apparently trying to make their snack a little bit more refined. We've all grown up eating Goldfish a fair amount, snacking. Jesse, probably not, given the things that we've documented about your history. Yep. But Goldfish are trying to appeal more to Jesse's crowd here by rebranding and calling their product Chilean sea bass. Now, these won't be available in stores. You would only be able to order these online, which I don't know how many people are out there ordering Goldfish online. But, Dad, this is a snack that in my mind shouldn't need any help. If you're a person of a certain age, you grew up guzzling these bad boys. My personal favorite version is when they show up at like a hotel continental breakfast and they're in one of those carafes so I can just pour them directly into my gullet. Yeah,
they're doing this to appeal, again, to the older crowd instead of, just just calling it the name it was of Goldfish, especially when the snacking went up during COVID and now has gone down. They're trying to appeal to the adults. The Chilean sea bass, which, by the way, is the Patagonian toothfish, is the actual name of the Chilean sea bass. But they're adding other flavors as well to try and appeal to the adults. Goldfish Old Bay seasoned crackers, spicy dill pickle, Goldfish Frank's Red Hot crackers. And during the holiday season, they're going to introduce Goldfish Elf maple syrup flavored grams.
Not gonna lie,
So
I'm in.
I'm all for that.
I'm in. And listen, freaky flavors are the parlance of our times. These little freaks that sit there and concoct all these Oreo flavors and the stuff that I'm eating in my car doing these reviews online, you absolutely need to get up on game. I'm proud of Goldfish. The thing that confuses me is you're trying to appeal to the older crowd. We're the ones that grew up eating you when you were Goldfish. You're nostalgia for us. I love you.
This is not a permanent change. It's a temporary change, but it's just to kind of reintroduce to say, hey, adults can eat this as well. So, Jesse, I know you didn't eat these as a kid. Will you eat them as an adult?
I love goldfish. Like, I can't have them around me because I'll eat the entire thing. In college, we used to call them houses. You know the goldfish cartons that were like the family-sized boys?
Yes.
We used to call those the goldfish houses, and we would just go ham on them. And it's like I have no self-control with goldfish. I can't buy them. I would eat the entire thing of them. But goldfish supremacy, best flavor is Parmesan. I stand by that.
Ooh, yeah, no, Parmesan on those bad boys, absolutely nasty with it. I'm a big Frank's Red Hot guy, so that one infinitely appealing. But I'm willing to give the holiday baddies a try. That's an exciting new twist on a classic, and whether you call them Chilean sea bass or you call them goldfish, they're delicious, and you should give them some of your time. Not an ad, but could be. Jesse, let's get to that. Interesting rebrand for J.J. Redick, now the Lakers head coach, this old man in the three podcast franchise that was incredibly successful, that is now rebranded to the young man and the three, where a bunch of various NBA stars, many of which have been on the show with J.J. in years past, are going to take turns in the hosting chair. And Tyrese Halliburton got the first crack at it, and his first guest was not only illustrious, but also very quickly turned the microphone around on him.
Yeah, former President Barack Obama was said guest, and he had some choice words for Halliburton about a polarizing topic in the NBA. Listen to this.
Y'all got to have a little more pride in that All-Star game. I mean, look, it's not as if y'all don't play pickup during the summers.
Right.
You know how to play in a way that, all right, I'm not going to hurt anybody. I'm not going to take anybody out. That All-Star game's, it's broke, man.
Well,
I mean, like people just like not running, everybody just trying all kinds of.
Okay, this is great because he's saying what we've all been saying forever, which is that, yeah, you got to try harder. Come on, give us something.
It just gets absolutely flamed by the former president. It has to be a tough spot. Tyrese Halliburton got to be pumped. You know, he's getting a chance to continue to grow his media brand and personality. He's at the helm of this great podcast franchise. You get to talk to Barack Obama, who seems like a great hang and a president that was a big part of a lot of our lifetimes here. And he just goes absolutely off and undresses you. Tyrese Halliburton was in the spin zone there.
Yeah, he had to be like, what the hell? How do I deal with this with a former president? But listen, all the All-Star games used to be played hard until players figured out why. Why play it hard? You know when I'll play it hard? In the fourth quarter, when the winning team gets more money than the losing team, that I'll try in the fourth quarter. But other than that, I'm not going to put forth an effort, especially when I have season left. You know, the NFL, it's just nobody wanted to get injured after the season and after rehab during the season. And as soon as a couple of injuries happened, they were like, screw this. Why the hell are we hitting each other in this game? So it's turned into a 7-on-7 game. So while I come from the old school of when All-Star games were played hard, I get why players, there's no meaning to it. There's no ramification to it. Why put yourself in a position where you may get hurt?
But to Jesse's point, Barack Obama is the perfect vessel for this, because much like when we have kid reporters ask tough questions to coaches after games and they have to answer because they're kids, what are you going to say to correct the former president of the United States?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure Secret Service is sitting off there. Like, they get that for life, I'm pretty sure. And so you got a bunch of guys in black suits with earpieces staring at every move you make. I'm probably not going to clap back at the president too much when he tells us to play harder in the All-Star game. So heady play by Barack Obama to go and get that takeoff for all the old heads out there. The only basketball game, Dad, where I have seen less effort by people on defense involved one of our super producers, Brandon Newman, my former college teammate, who was also in his wedding back in the day when him and his beautiful wife Michelle got married, wanted to play pickup basketball the day before, and we all went over to the gym and we're like, the last thing we're going to do is play defense on the groom when he's driving the lane. And so no one in the history of basketball has seen more looks than Brandon Jarrell Newman did the day before his wedding playing pickup hoops. We love you, Brandon.
How many layups did he miss given free access to the hoop?
Oh, still plenty. I mean, listen, Brandon is many things. I think a baller and a shot caller, not necessarily one of them, but fun times were had, a beautiful union was seen, and now a wonderful family has sprung from all those very wide open shots down the lane. Jesse, let's get to the third here. It's more portal action and not the kind that people usually think of nowadays.
Yeah, so there was that virtual portal over the summer that connected New York and Dublin. It had to get shut down for a week because of inappropriate behavior. Surprise, surprise. Then it was shut down permanently in September. Well, guess what? It just reopened. Okay, so now it's connecting Dublin to Philly. Yeah, it is connecting Dublin to Philly. And there's some video that we got of Elmo dancing to the people in Dublin. I think we have that and we can take a look at it. Do they know about Elmo in Dublin? Is Elmo like a cross-cultural experience?
It's not the people in Dublin who are confused. I'm freaking confused. What the hell is this? What the hell are we doing?
Philly Elmo's a thing? I don't know.
Are you talking about Philadelphia Elmo or the portal? Are you confused by, Dad?
The portal. What the hell is the portal? What is it?
It's a video view to another part of the world. It's to connect all of us in a way we can't, since we can't do the Avengers Endgame circles yet and walk through. This is the closest we can get, and it's going to inevitably end when someone shows their boobs or penis to the other side. That's usually how these things end.
Yeah, I think that's what happened in New York.
Okay, there's that to look forward to then, I guess. Huh?
Yeah, that'll be in Miss Out in the third next time.
Just another stupid thing.
Yeah.
That's just stupid.
Humanity.
I mean, it's a cool thing, but it's a subset, it's a subset of the internet. And the one thing we know about the internet is it's largely driven by naked people. And so this portal kind of falls victim to that same thing because we can't have nice things. I just love the fact that it didn't work in New York. And so they're like, you know who will be responsible with this? Yeah. Philadelphia. Philadelphia is going to be the one to take care of our sweet baby portal. Way to know your audience, bud. We hope we know our audience here, whether you're in Philly, New York, or somewhere on the other side of the portal. Download, subscribe, rate, and review the show. Leave it a 5-star rating. Check us out. Enjoy Thursday Night Football. Check me out on the pregame power-up. We'll talk to you tomorrow.